Okay. So I'll ask you the first question that comes to mind, which is, and it's kind of a big question, but what was your role in this investigation?
My role in the investigation primarily was I volunteered to come by and just kind of take a look and see if there was any places where they needed help. And when I got upstairs, they were reviewing some video of the car from some of the camera footage that they captured, and they were trying to get an enhanced portion of the license plate to see if they could read the plate and trace it back to a registered owner, but it was so pixelated, we weren't able to do that.
Sure. So you were part of the team that went through the surveillance video, hundreds of hours. Like, what was that like?
Pretty exhausting. You kind of get tired sitting in one spot looking at the same video over and over. You'll add another video, to the list, and as they collect more evidence, collect more video, you do more reviewing, and it's a very, very time-staking process.
So your team also went out and had to go find this video. You're going to hundreds of places.
Yes.
What was that like?
We went out on foot and basically like salesmen, door to door. Hey, we're with the University of Illinois Police or whatever respective agency was out there, and you knock on the door and you ask them if they had any surveillance cameras on their property, anything like Ring or ADT, anything like that. We would ask for it, and if they had a camera system available and willing to let us, take a look at it or actually load that video for us, we got it.
Yeah, and that took days to do all this.
Yes, yeah, it took several days, a couple of weeks. I was involved in that process.
And how many officers were with you, going out and doing that? Do you figure?
I mean, at any one time, we had several teams, stretched out over the Champaign-Urbana area. Anywhere from, on one day, we had at least 30 people, 30 officers on foot going door to door, covering a grid, and we'd get back together, check things off the list, and make sure that we didn't miss any houses or businesses on the way.
So you noticed a detail that ended up being a big break in the case.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So after I tried to look at the license plate and figured out we couldn't determine it, I started watching the video, trying to find some sort of anomaly on the vehicle. And I watched it forwards, backwards, did frame by frame, forward and backwards. And then I noticed that there was, something perhaps missing on the front passenger hubcap. So I played it in reverse again, played it forward, frame by frame, and then I got to one particular frame and I kind of looked at it, and then that's where I determined that there was, in fact, a defect on that hubcap on that tire.
When you saw that, what were you thinking?
I was like, maybe this is something we could use, something distinctive that I could pass on. And I shared it with Detective Hetrick, and he said he would share it with the rest of the team, and I left that day.
So how do you look back on that moment now that you know how important that detail ended up becoming?
I'm just happy that I was able to help. I'm happy that contribution led to the FBI agent who did the initial canvass when the vehicle was identified. The FBI agent remembered that particular vehicle at that residence did in fact have a chunk missing out of the hubcap. So it sparked his memory, and he was able to say, yeah, I remember at this residence there was a vehicle that had a chunk missing out of that hubcap, and it led him right back to his residence.
So in your career so far, have you ever experienced something like that before, where a tiny detail like that leads to a suspect?
I've had cases where there have been like little subtle nuances that make you think that's not right, or something's not right with that, and it causes like for further inspection, and then it turns into something else. So when you look further, it just adds more information and more detail to the investigation.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So in going through all this video that you guys had to do, trying to find anything, trying to find a needle in a haystack here, is it fair to assume or say that that's the most video, at least in your memory, that y'all have had to go through to try to figure something out?
Yeah, by far. That is the most video I have ever reviewed in my life, and probably will view for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I
mean, just countless hours of footage from different camera systems, the MTD bus cameras. We have several thousand, not several thousand, like 2,000 cameras on campus here. And so just kind of going through the routes that were determined that, you know, the vehicle was spotted. So you catch it on one camera, and then you follow it to the next camera, you know, it has a certain area. So we tried to just kind of track and see if we could see that vehicle in various places where we knew we had cameras on campus, and we reviewed all of that stuff too.
Through going through that arduous process, is there anything that you guys learned or maybe found more efficient methods of doing it? So if going forward, God forbid, you know, anything happens where you need to do that again, or is it just pretty much is what it is?
Well, I mean, I think we all learned, you know, quite a bit, and it's not that often you deal, you know, with a case of this magnitude, and, you know, hindsight is always 20/20. But moving forward, you know, given that information, I think that if something like this, God forbid, were to happen again, I think we would be a lot more focused on getting that information as quickly as we can. And I'm not saying that we didn't try to gather it as quickly as we can, but when that report comes out and that initial information comes out, you know, there's general steps that you take. You have to make a phone call. You have to put enter a person into the system as a missing person. And I think something like this will cause everybody to, instead of, well, let's see if this rolls into something even bigger, they'll just take off and assume the worst, you know, and then start working the case from that angle. And nobody likes to think, you know, from the worst case scenario, but sometimes, you know, it's necessary.
Gotcha. I don't know if I have any other questions for you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add?
I can't think of anything to add.
Anything else you want to talk about or anything?
I'm just glad that the case is over, pretty much.